Hi everyone, the Random Home Cook here. Today I decided to make Mabrume, or as I see it written sometimes, Burma, a type of baklava made of pistachios and Kataifi. There are many Arabic sweets within the baklava family. These are the one I like the most, because despite being sweet, are in my opinion the least sweet in comparison. In this video, I will also show success and failure. I'm still trying to get the process right with the tools I have at my disposal. But let's get cooking. The ingredients are pistachios, about 500 grams, without husk, Kataifi, that are a fine angel hair filo pastry, clarified butter, granulated and icing sugar, water, and a little bit of lemon. Optional, some rose water and honey. I do not have defined yet a specific quantity of these ingredients, just indicative measures with few exceptions. I will put in the description those quantities that work for me. These sweets are cooked, baked in clarified butter or ghee. The process has several steps. First, prepare all the components, starting with a bag of nice unsalted pistachios. I remove the husk to have them clean. This is time consuming. Definitely easier to buy the one without shell in the first place. But this is what I have and I will use it. I use about 500 grams of pistachios without husk, and I wet them with 2 or 3 tablespoons of rose water, but just water will do. While I clean them and mix, I keep checking for residue. The last thing I want is to find hard parts or shells. I mix them to ensure to distribute the moisture evenly. I add a generous tablespoon of icing sugar and a little bit of honey, but this is optional. I wanted to try it. I have seen very few recipes using it. This process allowed the pistachio to loosely bundle together, creating some stickiness among the kernels. I mix well for a little. While I was searching on how to do this dish, I couldn't find many recipes to take inspiration from, and the majority of these recipes are in a language I do not understand. But regardless of this barrier, this dish is challenging for the technique involved that seems easy, but it is far from. At least for me. I put the pistachio mix aside and I prepare the other items. I prepared butter, and depending on the room temperature, it presents as solid. So I melt it until it looks like this. A nice yellow liquid. I set it aside. I normally make my clarified butter, but this time I just bought it. I use at least 500 grams, but more might be needed, depending on the quantities, and the tray I use. Next, I prepare the Kataifi. I find them frozen, and I let them defrost gently in the fridge the night before. They present themselves as a solid pack of normally 3 or 4 bundles. I've seen a video in which, despite the language barrier, the strands are separated using 2 hands and a friction motion. So I decided to try this time. I've never done this before, but I feel that this made the process way easier, so this is now part of my process. This step also needed a little practice. The strands of each bundle are delicate, but less than they look. So a delicate roughness is needed to separate them. There is no particular order for many of these processes, but it is at this point that I normally preheat the oven at 200 degrees Celsius in ventilated mode. I think static would work too, maybe lengthening the cooking time a little and increasing the temperature to, let's say, 210. I believe cooking time is relative to the power of the oven and other variables. I tend to check if all the Kataifi assume a nice brown light color. I prepare a tray. I have a Pyrex tray. This is not ideal, but it's the one I have and I make it work. I believe a few centimeters taller would do better. It does the job because it can hold tightly 3 rolls that I can make from these ingredients. Once all is done, I'm ready to assemble. The technique is easier shown than described, but not easy at all to perform. I put a layer of Kataifi on a chopping board, being careful to have a nice even layer. If needed, I use some loose strands to patch holes and thinner parts. I use gloves for this assembly process. The kernels are sticky and this helps in some way, but not too much. I place a handful of kernel in the middle. Maybe next time I will try wetting the Kataifi with a bit of butter. I roll the Kataifi at an angle, paying close attention to the start and the end. The pressure needs to be just right, and the movements precise. Mine are not, but I do what I can. I do my best to push the escaping kernels back and repair any hole due to errors in movements. The kernels get away if I squeeze too much, and holes in the Kataifi forms with too little pressure or wrong move. The result is always more kernels escaping. But this is all a guess. I still need to figure this one out. This is the 4th or 5th time I try to make this dish, and I feel I'm getting better. Once compact enough, I move it into a tray that should be of the same size of the rolls I will make to tightly pack them. This is the second roll. I start in the same way. And is it going any better? Not sure. Let's see. The third and final roll show once again my poor form. However, overall, they turn out to be acceptable. As a mental note, rewatching this, I think I will try to reduce the diameter or filling in the future. They came out a little too big. Maybe smaller, they might be easier to handle. Now that the rolls are ready, I warm up the batter in a pot until it's nice and hot to frying temperatures. This step is quite dangerous, so the utmost attention is required. I pour carefully the clarified butter with a soup spoon, a little by little, on the rolls, until they are almost covered. I put them in the oven very carefully for about 15 to 20 minutes, to cook them halfway. Then I take them out, pour the very hot butter back into the pot to bring it back to frying temperature. This is also a delicate and potentially very dangerous operation. I flip the rolls very carefully and I place them back in the tray. And then I repeat the steps of adding the hot butter and cook them in the oven for another 15 to 20 minutes. While the rolls are cooking, I prepare the syrup. This can be light or caramelized. I put around 180 grams of granulated sugar, a tablespoon of lemon juice, and a glass of water for the 3 pots. This brings them to the sweetness I like, but it is a personal preference. The ones from store are definitely far sweeter. Depending on taste, this can be increased or reduced. I put the pot on the hob and I cook it, stirring until it thickens to my liking, but not too much. Once cold, will solidify, and if too thick, it will be very hard. When the rolls are cooked, I carefully remove the bulk of butter and I move them on a baking rack, placed on a clean tray to drain the excess butter. When the rolls are cold, I heat up the syrup a little and I brush the rolls, rolling them as needed. I do this operation on the same cooling rack, but I change the drip tray below so I can reuse the syrup if it's needed. Once the syrup is cold and hardened, the rolls can be sliced. I always saw these sliced at an angle, so I do my best to do the same. Here, the result of 3 batches done in different times. These are slightly undercooked. They needed just a little longer. The pistachios did not bake properly and they taste a little bland. These are overcooked, too long in the oven, or the butter was too hot. The pistachios have roasted a little too much and taste a bit burnt. These are just right, or at least as I like them. Unfortunately, until I cut them, I cannot fully assess the result, so more work is required to tune my process. All 3 outcomes tasted good, but I have my preferences. I would have preferred all to turn out as the last example. If you like this video and you would like to see more, please consider clicking subscribe and the notification bell. See you next time.